All right, welcome back to the channel. We are going to start doing assembly. So in the last video, you saw the parts that we had printed out. We laid the front end out for you, continuing on our F40 project, of course. Pretty exciting. I'm gonna start assembling some of these. I've got about half of the front end parts on a pallet here next to me. I'm gonna try to assemble these right here. We are going to start with the super glue and the kicker. This is IKI Pro FX 616 accelerator, and this is just a CYA fixed super glue, medium viscosity, so nothing fancy. Put a piece of cardboard down on our table, and let me say a shout out to Killboy Daryl. If you guys follow him, we can put a link in the description. After the comments about our last video and the need for a microphone, we actually took his suggestion, got a new camera and a new wireless microphone. So hopefully the audio in these videos will be much better. Shop's empty today. Hopefully we're in a spot where the lighting is pretty good. And we're trying to up our game a little bit to make your viewing experience a little better. So I'm gonna start putting some of these parts together. We are going to try to work with some of the, what I would call more structurally sound pieces. So pieces that have kind of shape to them like this. Then we're gonna add some of the pieces on. Some of the pieces are much flatter than others, and I think if we start with some that have structure, it's gonna make the assembly process go a little quicker to start with, and we'll kind of work from there. May have to change what we're doing midstream, but it's a learning process for us. So thanks again for watching, and let's get after it. So I've gone in here and sort of pre-trimmed. If you guys are familiar with 3D printing, some of these parts will have little nubs and spots from support or things like that. So we're trying to fit these parts together as best as possible. I'll try to do this in a place where I can, one, hold it, and two, you can also see it being seamed together. So I'll fit these parts up together like this, kind of look how they match up. If they don't match up very well, then I'm gonna go in and do some trimming. If they're pretty close, then I'm gonna glue them together and kind of see where that gets us. So trying to make all the edges line up. We can always trim them and sand them later, and kind of go from there. This one looks pretty decent where it is. So we will put some glue on it and see how this part of the process works. So basically with the glue, you put the glue on, and then the kicker makes it cure pretty much instantly. And that will make it much quicker as far as bonding the parts together. I don't have to hold it near as long. So once we get these tacked together, I'll get a pretty good glue bead on them. Then I believe what we will try to do is go down the seams of these parts and actually glue a pretty good portion of the seams together. All right, so those two pieces are bonded together. Looks pretty good. I've bonded them in 3 places. You can see one here, one here, one here, actually 4 places, then one on the back side. So that looks to be pretty good. We'll kind of start piecing these together, and then we'll see if we have to do anything else. The parts line up pretty good. I don't know how well you can see in the camera, but there's a little bit of mismatch. So this one, for example, the edge pulled up a little bit off the plate. So I'm just trying to kind of make the edges line up in a pretty good manner, and then I can always go back later and sand the edges to the mating parts, those types of things. So we'll definitely make them fit. But as you probably guessed, this is the headlight bucket on the driver's side of the F40. So we'll start working from here and start gluing these things together. And So a lot of these front parts, as I mentioned, the front of the vehicle, most of these parts are actually PLA, so it'll be interesting. We did the front of the vehicle, most of the front of the vehicle in PLA, and because of issues with feeding that material through the AMS, we actually switched over to the Bamboo Labs PETG HF. So most of what you will see later, red and black, is PETG HF, but the front of the vehicle is, for the most part, PLA. So these parts, you can see I'm kind of being gingerly with it, but it's pretty robust. Pretty impressed with just having glued a few pieces together. So let me grab this corner piece and we'll put it in next. So what I'm really trying to do is get the A surfaces lined up pretty well, because the buckets inside this light bucket, some of those types of parts, it's going to be much easier for me when we skim coat this and ultimately body fill it. It'll be much easier for us to kind of level some of those areas out, but I do want to try to line up a lot of the body lines and those types of things while I'm gluing it together. If nothing else, I think aesthetically it'll look like a much better model while we're working on putting it together. So that's basically what I'm focused on, is lining up the A surfaces and making those look good. And some of these parts, when they're sliced, it kind of gets a bit of a funky edge to it. It's kind of hard to see, but this inside edge is actually at a pretty good angle, just the way the part was sliced and the way it turned out. And we may find some of these parts that we don't like the way they fit. So some of these pieces, as I mentioned, the orientation that you are 3D printing them at can have a big difference on the quality of the surface. So I try to print the A surface so it is vertical instead of horizontal, and just an effect of the slicing process and the fact that the files are more or less a bunch of little triangles, you get some of these edges. So during that cleanup process, we will actually go through and clean that stuff up. And I'm just using a regular knife to clean these edges up. I may actually grab a file or even some sandpaper. We'll see how this works for now, though. All right, so hopefully you can see that it's really coming together well. So this stuff lines up pretty good. Like I said, there's going to be some fit issues at some of these corners. Really, overall, as long as the shape is there, it's going to be fine, because we're going to knock all these surfaces down, and ultimately you will skim coat them with filler and then put fiberglass on these. So also on the back of these, depending on how rigid these are, once we have some larger assemblies together, I will probably lay some fiberglass on the back of these to reinforce them so we can move them around without actually breaking the panels apart. And when I'm clamping these, it actually allows you to slide the panels a little bit inside each other with these clamps. These are just standard welding clamps. I think we got these at our local Harbor Freight. They're pretty cheap, and we obviously typically use them for welding, but in this case I found that it's a good extra set of hands to keep this clamp down while I'm moving the panels around. All right, so this would be car position for this part. That is 8 pieces put together. Overall, pretty happy with how that process is going. So the parts look pretty good. And everything actually seems to be fitting together pretty well. So I'm going to grab some additional components and keep going. All right, so now we have about 8 or 9 parts together. You can see this is the left front corner of the F40 coming together pretty well. The parts look pretty good. It's actually pretty robust picking it up and carrying it around. I was a little concerned about this flap. It was a pretty difficult part. There is a gap in the grill here with these parts, so I'm going to decide which ones of these parts we're going to attach and which ones we're going to leave unattached, because I don't want any large unsupported areas that I'm going to have to basically let sit while we move other parts around. So we'll do a little work here, fit these up and see what we want to fit and what we want to leave. So with the spray, I don't really know how much you're supposed to use. I kind of spray it till it looks like it's having an effect on the glue. Of course, I didn't even bother to read the directions, but we are outside in the shop. At some point, like I said, we'll do a shop tour video, but we've got 10,000 square feet here, including the offices, the lifts, and all the work area. So it's a nice open ventilated area here. There's heat and air conditioning in this side of the building, so kind of do it in a place where it seems safer than doing it inside the office area. Looking pretty good. Starting to see some structure here, which I'm pretty impressed with. Looks really good. So a little bit of difficulty with this part right here. It looks like the edge of it wasn't printed quite right, so kind of making it a little difficult to line it up. But like I said, ultimately we will fill in the gaps with the part, and I'm going to hold this over this direction and glue this back edge. And although there's more of a gap there than what I would like, it'll make it. All right, so you can see where we're at so far. Just about have a full front corner of the F40. Don't know how many parts we're on now. Looks like about 12. I had mentioned previously, you can see the numbers on these parts. So there's a corresponding pictures and some other information that I got from the company kit car that I bought the files from. So there's every one of these pieces has a picture in a full picture of the car, and then it'll have a picture of where in the front segment, the mid segment, the rear segment, where the part actually goes in the assembly. So not difficult at all to figure out where the parts go. You know, some of those problems you think you may have, really the files are cut nicely, and it really is not much trouble at all to figure out where the parts go as you're trying to assemble them. So let's see if we can get this other one in here. So this part, I may end up reprinting this part. I don't know how well you can see it on camera, but this part has a corner that's peeled up, and it's going to make it pretty difficult to line that piece up, because you can see if I attempt to put the panel in place, which the panel actually fits in that gap pretty well, but it leaves a really large mismatch right here. Does it really make a difference? Probably not, and I'll mess with it here for a few minutes and see if I can get it glued in there if it makes me happy. But probably a part like this I probably should reprint. And again, the way this part was oriented, I can tell by the texture on this flat part. So this part, when I first started printing, this would be one of the first parts I printed. There's no number on it, and it printed just like this, sitting on the bed. And really, it's not how it should have been printed. The part should have been printed sitting up on this edge on the bottom. So I actually will probably go ahead and look this part up and reprint this part. So I'm going to skip this one for now, and then this part actually goes in here like so, back on the back. So that part is pretty important to tie this corner together, and this part fits really well. Again, you can tell once you've printed enough of these things, I can tell by the way the layer lines are and just how I started printing. This part was printed this way, and this part should have also been printed the same way. So it was printed this side flat down and should have been printed this way. So when I first started printing, I was trying to print in a direction that would minimize the amount of support that we needed on the parts, when in reality, I should be printing in a direction that gives me the best quality part. And I mentioned to one of you that commented, and thanks again for your comments, I really appreciate them. I mentioned that we were using a 0.2 millimeter layer height with a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, and we are printing, when I started printing, I said, I'm gonna try these things with a 0.6 millimeter nozzle and a 0.3 millimeter height. And it actually does print quite a bit faster. You guys have probably seen other people do videos about using different layer heights and different nozzle sizes. But for me, with having 9 printers here making parts, it doesn't outweigh the benefit of time, doesn't outweigh how much worse the parts come out. I shouldn't say poorly, because the parts that are printed at 0.6, there's some here, we're still using them. But the part quality and the bed adhesion, all those types of things were much better in my experience with a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. So I'm gonna figure out what part this is, and I am gonna reprint this one. I'm just not really happy with the way it fits. So each one of these parts about a 4-hour print, and I'll figure out how many parts we've actually printed total and give you guys the number. Pretty cool milestone here with this project. I probably should have done this first, but this part in particular is actually the first part that I printed when we started this project. So kind of neat to take it and put it together. So I mentioned before that there's a gap between the center of the car and the bumper, the part that we've already started assembling. So I'm trying not to assemble things that make it difficult to move the pieces around. We're gonna start having some pretty large pieces that we have to handle, and we're gonna see how we set those things up. But yeah, pretty neat. You can see this one says, we started printing on 8/18 of 25. This was the first piece that I actually printed. And this part was printed a few days after that. So pretty neat that we put those together. So I'm gonna go ahead and join these 4 front bumper pieces, and then we will set that aside. And we will then start on the passenger side, the same front quarter fender area. And I did start that part that I said I wanted to reprint. I did go ahead and restart that part. So I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, a little picky when it comes to some of these things. That part probably would have been fine, but I went ahead and reprinted it anyway, because it'll keep me up at night. We do have to be careful when we're laying these parts out, because if I set this on the bench, it's a little hard to see, but if I just set it on the bench and glue it, it actually pushes the parts. There's a slight arch in these parts that are on the front here, so I really have to be careful when I'm gluing these together that I'm putting them in the correct shape. If I, like I said, if I just set them down, it doesn't put them in the correct position. Not sure if you guys can hear that horn in the background, but there's actually a train track that runs about 20 feet behind this building. So a lot of horn blasts from a train. Hopefully there's nobody sitting on the tracks. All right, so I think you can, pretty recognizable part there, the front lip on the bottom of an F40, so we'll set that aside. Then we are going to now move to the passenger side. Same thing, we're gonna assemble that quarter panel. You can see some of these parts have what is basically support material. So some of these parts I pulled off, some of them I didn't. The idea behind this is you kind of give this a bigger footprint when you're printing to help it stick to the bed. So early on, before I really had a good printing process down for all the parts, I was using a pretty decent size band around the parts, and on some of the parts even a raft, to make the parts, make sure the parts stuck to the bed until I was comfortable with using less material. So all the parts you've seen me glue together so far, this bottle of glue, I've probably used about 20% of it, and it wasn't full to begin with. And then this, I'm gonna guess I've used about a half of it, about half of a can. So I have one more can. We'll order some extra supplies, but from an assembly method standpoint, the super glue seems to be working perfectly. I keep pushing this table. I noticed when I reviewed the video, this is the first time, as I mentioned, us using this new camera and the microphone. I keep leaning against the table and pushing it closer and closer to the camera. So I'm gonna try to try to work on that. If you guys have any other comments about how we're shooting the video, like I said before, I appreciate the comments on the microphone. The DJI microphone that Daryl recommended, it's worked great. So I actually ordered a few more of them. There's a lot of times when you'll see Jack and I both working on a vehicle or someone else working on a vehicle. It'll be nice to be mic'd up, so both of us, you can actually connect two to this camera at the same time. So has worked great so far. I have glued my fingers to this thing about 30 times already, so I think a little acetone and that stuff will come right off. But looking pretty good on the other side as well, so we're keep chugging away at it. That piece right there doesn't fit great, but again, this thing's going to be skimmed and coated, so basically make them fit as well as you can, and then we'll adjust it in another process. If it really gets to the point where something's bad, I'm pretty confident I can knock the part out and then print another one. lot of progress made on this part. You can see we've got our part filled in, basically got the whole fender filled in. And like I said, these parts are pretty robust when they're glued together. I still think we're going to reinforce the back of it with fiberglass or something, but overall, I think pretty good. Let me see if I can fit. There's actually a headlight bucket here, and I've been debating as to whether or not I would close it in or not. So I'll grab those parts and kind of see how this fits in and decide whether or not I'm going to put those in and close those holes up or not. All right, so these are the parts that I was talking about. This is the headlight bucket. And I believe these back ones are actually the ones that flip up. Then these have the fixed lamps in the front of them. So these actually look like they fit pretty well. And I think we'll add a decent amount of rigidity to the overall panel. So we will go ahead and set these on here. There are two of them. There's an inner and an outer. All right, so that's the two bucket parts. They don't line up great, but again, we're going to be coating this thing. So this side actually turned out really nice, pretty rigid. I'm going to grab the other side that we did earlier and put those two bottom pieces in it. All right, so there's the bottom part of those buckets installed too. Again, don't fit that great, but it really is irrelevant at that point. With the hood pieces, I'll call them kind of the field pieces of the hood. So you have the two corners that are pretty structurally sound. They have some shape to them. With the hood pieces, we're gonna have to figure out how to put them together and keep them in the proper shape for the hood. So there's a half a dozen parts that are literally just squares with a shape to them one way or the other. And the key here will be figuring out how to keep those lined up so that across the hood they're sloped one direction and down the hood they're sloped the other direction. So sort of like with the fenders, my plan here is to start attaching the parts that have some sort of structure to them, and then we will kind of build out to the edges. I've got a couple other ideas on how to reinforce the parts, but we may end up putting some of these 2 or 3 or 4 panels together, fiberglassing the back of them in the proper shape, and then putting them all together. So again, we're gonna have to figure out how to put the whole front end together somewhere. And I have a frame table that I built years ago, have it set up in SolidWorks. Everything is to scale, have drawings of it. So when we go to design suspension parts and things like that, I actually have a frame table that I can design the parts in SolidWorks right on the frame table, and we can orient the body on that frame table with correct dimensions. So we'll try to glue a few of these together and see how that works. I'm gonna have to get something a little more aggressive to cut this off. There's a large nub. I'm sure you probably can't see it in the camera, but if I hold this up, this is the straight edge, and because of the way the parts are sliced, it leaves this kind of hump here, and that is preventing the two parts from sitting together close enough. All right, so I went over there and ground the part. The compressor came on, so I paused, hesitated to start the video back up so you didn't have to hear the compressor run, but I ground the edge down. Now you can see, or it might be a little hard to see, but now these two panels will butt up better together. So I am just seaming them up and following my process. All right, so you can see the way these panels are lining up is kind of what I was hoping with the parts that have some rigidity, some features to them. It's kind of forcing that into that sort of slope that the hood should have. So we're going to continue along like this and see how this ends up coming together. I'm going to put this fourth piece in here. And I think you can see the curve there, and hopefully that's pretty accurate. So the data that I purchased also came with templates that are every 50 millimeters across the front and the whole entire length of the car and the rear of the car. So there's going to be a pretty easy way for me to cut some templates. I haven't decided if we're going to convert one of our CNC, or we have a CNC plasma table that we may convert to a router, or if I will actually just use the laser. We have a 3,000 watt laser that'll take 5x10 sheet, and perhaps just cut those out of stainless steel or mild steel. Something we use for our business, and obviously can use it for some of our other projects as well. So we'll continue with the hood panels here, and about time to call it a day. So clearly for some of these panels, the order that you assemble them in is going to be important. Again, I think it just comes to the contour of the hood. So these two panels would not butt up together when I was already had this one attached to this. When I pulled them apart, I was able to get them to line up reasonably well. And I think it's because this one has a bit of a bow in the middle of it that it isn't conforming to these parts. So I'm actually going to leave these separated, glue them up on the inside, and then leave them separated until we can figure out how we're going to more rigidly put this field, the large field of panels together. Then we have two more that actually make up the full, almost the full length of this hood. There's these two pieces, then these two go this way or this way. This is another thing I've got to kind of figure out, is see how which direction and which orientation these panels kind of best fit together and fit each other from an angle perspective. So it appears I have this one labeled on the wrong side. Given the progress that we made on day one, I thought it would be cool to actually set these parts down. While all these sections are not glued together yet, you really get an understanding of what we're doing and the size that this thing is going to be. So here's the passenger side. We'll call it the front edge of the quarter, the front fender, the wing if you're overseas, and then here is the driver's side. And the two pieces you still see missing, as I mentioned, they are actually, well, one of them is on the printer right now, so I've just got these set up on jack stands. But I thought it was a pretty cool visual of the parts and how this thing is going to end up coming together. So pretty excited about this thing, and not a bad start for day one. What you will see on video will obviously be very condensed. I actually have spent about 5.5 hours today assembling what you've seen, so we'll see where that comes out video-wise, but it's about 5 hours of assembly so far. Not a lot of material involved, just a lot of labor. So one of my first activities this morning was to take all of these parts and organize them. So I'll get a final count. I know it's obviously in the hundreds of parts, but basically we have the entire interior printed now, the dashboard and the center console. Then we go over here. This is actually the left-hand door, so all of the door parts are printed. This is the famous F40 rear wing. All those parts are there. There's a few parts left over from the front end. Then as we come down here, this is the parts that are marked M are the middle of the car in these two shelves. And then on the bottom here, we have the R parts, which are all the rear section of the vehicle. So all of these parts are ready for assembly. There are still some trim pieces and things and the right-hand door that I have to print, but for the most part, we're at the point where we're going to start assembling everything. So I promised a rundown of the quantity of parts that we are printing and that we're going to assemble. So behind me, you can see the rack where we have got everything but the front parts that you've seen in the video. Those are assembled. These are all the rest of the components. So interior components, left-hand door, wing components, the middle section of the car, and the rear section of the car. So a quick breakdown is as follows. All the body parts for the car that we will 3D print are 487 files. So there are 320 files that are the body, 22 files for the interior. Then there are 143 files that are other parts. There's a lip, there's a gurney flap, there's door handles, there's tail lights, all these kind of parts that we'll eventually have to print. That makes up for the 487 files. So these files take anywhere, there's a few of them that take 1 or 2 hours. There's a few of them that might take 14 hours. Some of the more complex parts on the doors, for example, and on the corners of the door jambs and things took significantly more time. So if I just take an average time of 6 hours per each part, that is 2,922 hours of printing. So that'll give you a pretty good idea. I think round numbers, we're somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 hours of printing. as I said before, we have 9 printers running, and I will actually get a tally of how many rolls of filament we have used. I believe right now we are already past about 50 rolls, 1 kilogram rolls. So I'll give that that tally as well. But some people had asked how many parts we were going to end up printing. And the lighting right here is not the greatest for video, but I wanted you to see the rack that I put up to keep all these parts on and try to keep things organized. All right, so in a complete rookie move, I had the camera set up this morning when I started doing some additional assembly in the wrong mode. So we're gonna go back and capture a few of these parts that I assembled. We'll use some of the video. You'll see it pop up in some of the shorts and some other places in our social media. But I thought I would at least grab the parts that I had gone over and assembled. So this is gonna be the front top edge of the fascia of the hood. This is where the Ferrari emblem goes. And one thing to note here, I had mentioned that we're exploring some different ways to attach these panels to each other to reinforce them. So one thing I did here is bought some cheap tongue depressors off Amazon and actually glued a few of them at the edges of some of these panels just to see how it would reinforce some of the panels. It seems to work okay, but I think ultimately we're gonna end up getting some fiberglass and putting a layer of fiberglass along the back of these. So one other thing I mentioned was just putting these panels together and then having the panels not have enough support to let them freestand. So I'll show you a good example of this. This one right here, the front panel. Then there's some thin panels that go behind it. And then we get into another section like this of the hood. So you can see this panel goes here on the passenger side, and there's 2 more panels here. So it's going to be difficult to have like 6 panels deep without some sort of support behind it or some sort of reinforcement. The other thing is I want to make sure we get this curvature of the hood, which you can see in this panel is captured pretty good through the assembly process. But I want to make sure as we go 5, 6 panels deep that you still are getting that curvature of the hood there. So in addition to the front panels that we did the center panel that you saw, and then both of the rest of the fender extensions. So these go on the large part of the wheel well. You'll see later in the video where I have the whole parts, all the product laid out, so you can really see where everything lines up at. So another section of the hood, and again, just putting these panels unsupported. I've been putting a few together at a time, and then we'll figure out a good way to actually connect all of them together with fiberglass. You can see again, I stuck a tongue depressor in here, just trying to see if it would add enough rigidity to make these panels where I could stick them together. I actually have also 3D printed some tabs that you can glue between the parts. So that is going to do it for this part of our F40 video. Really appreciate you guys following the channel, watching the channel, and appreciate all the questions, all the input. Questions about 3D printing, put them in the comments. Please do click like and subscribe to our channel if you're not already and you just came across this. We've got a lot more content coming for this project. I've got on a rack behind us, I've got all the parts already printed with the exception of the right-hand door. We apologize for the shortage we've caused on the PET GHF from bamboo, red material. I have another 25 rolls incoming. So we will get that material in, continue our printing. Thanks again. Appreciate you guys watching. Let us know if you have any questions and look forward to additional future videos on the F40 project. Thanks a lot.